On behalf of the Syracuse University community, I am honored to introduce the Vice President of the United States of America, Joe Biden.
Hello, Syracuse. It's good to be home. Chancellor, thanks for allowing me back on campus. Frank Sinatra once said, "Orange is the happiest color." He must have been thinking about Syracuse. It's an honor to hold a degree from this institution. Syracuse was there for me and has been there for me during the most difficult moments of my life. It's also been there for me for the best moments of my life. So it's an honor to be back on campus today. And Mayor Minor, where's the mayor? I want to thank her for the, where are you? Mayor, good to see you, kiddo. We're friends. The luckiest thing for her is I didn't announce for president. She wouldn't know what to do. It's great to see you, Mayor. Thanks for the passport back home. The mayor has been, comes down to my home in Washington and has been just an inordinately strong supporter of everything Syracuse and everything Syracuse University. But it was an honor to have the opportunity to ride up with one of the most competent and most dedicated senators I've ever worked with, Kristen Gillibrand, who's here today. Chris and I share a lot in common, one of which is the deep passion we share about this issue. Kristen has led the effort to deal with sexual assault in the military and continues to fight for even more change. And it's an honor to be your backup, Kristen. Thank you all for all you do. And you know, when I first got to the Senate 287 years ago, Democrats and Republicans used to be friends. Well, I found a new friend, a Republican. Your new Congressman, Congressman Kitco. Where are you, Congressman? And by the way, he's a great family. Your son with you today? All right, I want to see him. And also a fellow Syracuse law grad, a great prosecutor. Look, we have representatives here today from the New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, and coalitions like that are funded by the Violence Against Women Act. They play a vital role supporting survivors and reminding policymakers how important this is. And I want to thank all of them here today for their great work. And Samantha, I want to thank you. You know, folks, those of you are survivors, and there's survivors who've not told anybody they're survivors in this crowd and all across America. It takes an enormous amount of courage to speak up. It really does. It takes an enormous amount of courage because you know you'll be judged when you speak. And most importantly, when you speak about anything that's happened in your life that's not good, it brings it all back. It brings it all back like it happened yesterday. So I want to thank you for speaking out and hopefully giving a lot of young women and some young men in this audience and within the sound of our voices the courage to speak up as well. For those who haven't been on this end of this heinous crime, every time you repeat it, you relive it. But it matters. It matters. It brings victims out of the shadow, and that's the only way we're going to be able to begin to change the culture, to help stop other rapes and attacks relating to sexual violence. Look, I was earlier this week, I started off at the United States Naval Academy, went to Morehouse College in Atlanta, and at Clemson University. And Clemson's coming to visit Saturday. And I promised them I'd be wearing orange, Northern Syracuse orange. Guys, Play your hearts out, man. I tell you what, I'm looking for an upset. I'm looking for an upset. Look, when historians look back to determine what kind of nation we have been, what they'll look at is what we look at when we look abroad, is how have we treated the most defenseless among us. That will be one of the critical elements as future generations determine what kind of society we were. And that's not hyperbole. That's exactly how it will look. And within that, they'll question how society dealt with sexual violence against women and men. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, in particular, sexual violence on college campuses. The reason I've focused so much on college campuses in my career is I believe in the communities that exist on college campuses provides us the best chance to make significant strides in eliminating violence against women. And this is the reason why I say that. This is a community. No matter how loosely knit it is a community. And your attitudes, each of your individual attitudes, have a profound impact on your classmates. What I learned back when I first drafted the Violence Against Women Act, and Senator Gillibrand and I were talking about it on the way up, when I first drafted it, nobody wanted to support it. Women's groups didn't support it because they were worried it wouldn't go very far and it would divert from other important issues affecting women. Many of the very most conservative religious organizations strongly opposed what I was doing. And the thing I learned in that battle, getting this passed over 21 years ago, was what we most need is not the new laws and we passing those, was we need a fundamental change in our culture. And the quickest place to change culture is to change it on the campuses of America. And in the process, save the lives of thousands of young women and some young men suffering the consequences of sexual abuse and rape. This is important to me. It should be important to you. This is one area where we have not made nearly enough progress, though. When the president asked me to join him on the ticket, he asked, what did I want jurisdiction over? And in addition to saying that the one thing I wanted, the only commitment I wanted from him is I get to be literally get to be the last person in the room on every major decision to give him my view, that I also wanted to bring inside the Vice President's office for the first time, the Violence Against Women office. And let me make something clear. Sexual violence on college campuses makes no distinction based on geography, the size of the campus, the academic standing of the campus, the racial makeup. Unfortunately, as Sam pointed out, 1 in 5 women will be the victim of sexual assault while a student. A recent report found that it does vary depending on the campus, but no campus across America is less than 13%, and some are as high as 30%. But the truth is, guys, one assault is too many. My father had an expression. I always get asked, because I've been so passionate about this for so long, the press, understandably, not a criticism, the press would say, he must feel this so strongly about this because maybe his mother was violated, or his sister, or his wife before they were married, or his daughter. The truth is, the reason I wrote this legislation in the first place is because I was raised by a gentle, honorable man who said that the greatest sin a government or an individual could commit was the abuse of power. And the cardinal sin of all those sins was when a man raised his hand to a woman or a child or anyone physically weaker, or tried to dominate them psychologically. And you know that sexual assault is not about sex. It's about power. It's about power. So that's why I wrote the Violence Against Women Act 25 years ago. It passed 21 years ago. And it's a misnomer in a sense because, as pointed out by Samantha, men are also victims of sexual abuse as well. Not nearly as often, but they as well. And if you doubt this is a cultural matter, I'll just take you back when I drafted the law. You can, as my wife, who's a community college professor, would say, you can Google it. I was told that I was wandering into sacred territory, family territory. This was about family. I was interfering with family relationships. That a man had a right to chastise his wife sometimes. That battered women's shelters, one headline wrote, was Biden was just trying to establish indoctrination centers for feminism, for women. But I was convinced that if we pull back the curtain on this dirty little secret in American society, that the vast majority of the American people who are good and decent would positively respond. But talk to your parents about what it was like 25 and your grandparents and 35 years ago. People knew what was going on, but no one wanted to intervene. When a man slapped his wife in public, no one would say anything. Somehow, culturally, that was okay. Some of your parents and grandparents knew that one of your grandmother's girlfriends was being sexually abused by an intimate partner, but it was a private matter. That's why I hate the phrase domestic violence. Domestic makes it sound like it's a domesticated cat. It is the worst of all forms of violence. And women who are abused by someone they know are much less likely to recover than women who are abused by an absolute stranger. All the data shows it, because women say, I should have known. What did I do? What was it that happened that caused him to think that I was like that? All the wrong questions. I held, and my staff did, over 1,000 hours of research, hundreds of hours of hearings and testimony. We heard from advocates and experts, health professionals, psychiatrists, brave survivors. One young woman I'll never forget, early on, there was a supermodel named Marla Hansen in New York City. It was a celebrated case 23 years ago. She lived in an apartment complex in Manhattan. Her landlord kept hitting on her because she wanted to move from a studio apartment to a one-bedroom apartment. And she decided she was going to move out. And one day on the job, she got a call saying, if you meet me in the bar restaurant in the basement, in the first floor of the apartment complex, like many complexes have in New York City, we can sign a contract and you'll get the one bedroom you're looking for. So she showed up after work. When she did, he hit on her again. She got up and walked out. And as she walked out, two goons that this jerk hired followed her out and with razors slashed her face to ruin her career. When I asked her to testify, I went to see her first so she wouldn't be caught off guard because millions of people watched. When I said, what did your mother say? She said, my mother asked, why were you in a bar? What did your girlfriend say to you? What were you wearing? Did you have a bra on? Was it a short skirt? What did you say? Another young woman, bright, beautiful kid, was a student at a small college just north of Pittsburgh. They didn't have a football team, but they had a soccer team, and she showed up for orientation And the night, this fourth night of orientation, I think it was the fourth night of orientation, they had the bonfire for the big game the next day. And it was cold. And a upperclassman who was the boyfriend of a high school friend of hers offered to walk her back to the dorm. And he said, but I want to stop in my room first to get a jacket. So she walked in with him, he dragged her in, and he raped her. I'll never forget her testimony. She said, I ran back to my dorm. I was on the 4th floor. I ran upstairs, and I got undressed, stripped, and took a scalding shower. I mean, that sort of seared into my mind, a scalding shower. She said, I walked out of the shower with a towel around me and sat at the end of my bed sobbing. And my RA came in. And she said to me, what happened? And I told her. And she looked at me and she said, you've been raped. And I said, no, I wasn't raped. I knew him. I knew him. That's when I realized that we had to do more than pass tougher laws, create more protection. We had to change the cultural norms of this country. Many of you in this room, but I'm not sure how many on campus as a whole, know what the phrase rule of thumb comes from, what its origin is. And under English common law back in the 12th, 13th, 14th century and beyond, your wife was a chattel, just like your horse or your mule or your cow or your sheep, giving you the right to chastise your wife. But too many women were dying. And so in English common law, which is written, it moves, a decision was made that a man could not beat his wife with a rod thicker than the circumference of his thumb. When I drafted the legislation, I had an incredible staff. A woman who's now been moved over to the great lawyer. She works for the National Football League, holding them accountable. Cynthia Hogan. And Cynthia, I asked her to go have my staff do a survey of all the laws, state laws that existed, and how they treated. Was there a distinction made between the way they treated women and men under the law? My state of Delaware, which is a progressive state, there was a law on the books at the time that said if you went out with someone you knew and he brutally raped you, meeting the definition of first-degree rape with a severe penalty, he could not be charged with first-degree rape if you voluntarily went out with him. But if someone jumped out of an alley from behind a dumpster and brutally raped you the same exact way, that person could be held accountable for first-degree rape. Built into the whole system throughout is this notion that if I knew you, there must be something I did. The victim did. I should have somehow known better. What a sick standard. And I realized then this was a generational fight. We've made great progress. But because I keep tabs on this issue, I have a serious staff of professionals and PhDs on my staff that do nothing but this every day in my office. I know that's unusual for a vice president, but this is a matter of, I think, national consequence for us. So I had them check with the Bureau of Justice Statistics and other statistics on what kind of progress we've been making. So last year, I had them go back and check with the Bureau of Justice Statistics. And I found there was real disappointment. I was stunned. We've made enormous progress overall in violence against women, particularly in acquaintance rape. But one area there's been little or no progress since I wrote the act in the past 21 years ago was in college campuses. So I began to hold national conference calls with hundreds of colleges on the phone. Maybe some of you participated in them with me 2 years ago. And I asked, because there were thousands on the call, they could not ask questions, too many people. I spoke, but I asked them and I gave them a website. And I said, what do you men and women think were the most important things we could do to make college campuses safer? A lot of practical suggestions, some lighting, emergency numbers, etc. But you know the one thing that came through the clearest? Men and women said, you've got to get men more involved. Men on campus have to take more responsibilities, and administrations on campus have to take more responsibility. So I spoke with the president, and that's why we launched the It's On Us campaign, to make clear that everyone has a responsibility, from administrators and staff to the student population. More than 300 campuses have subsequently hosted over 1,000 It's On Us events. Nearly 300 colleges and universities created their own It's On Us public service announcements, reaching millions of people online at halftime in football games, basketball games, athletic events. But this year, I wanted to move it more. That's why we launched a week of action on campuses across the country to raise the issue and get more students and administrations involved. And thus far, over 250,000 students have already taken the pledge, the It's On Us pledge. A pledge I'm going to ask each and every one of you in this auditorium to take before I leave. And it's simple. It says, 1, I promise to intervene when I see something. 2, I promise to create an environment where sexual assault is unacceptable. That means how we talk about it in public. And 3, ensure that any time there's no consent, I understand it's rape. No consent means no, whether you're conscious or unconscious. It means no. So hop on your phones when you leave here and take the pledge, because it starts with you on this campus here at Syracuse. You've hosted a pledge drive every day this week. I encourage you to keep this effort up. During this week of action throughout the school year, here's the simple things you already are doing and others you can do. You can take the pledge for yourself, embarrass your friends into getting engaged, and I mean embarrass them into getting engaged. All you guys who think you're men, think you're tough guys, get your rear end. Stand up, be a man. Be a man. Ask businesses and libraries and hospitals to display It's On Us logos. Encourage sports teams, fraternities, sororities, bands to get involved as you already are. Hold press conferences and roundtables with school administrators and students to raise the profile of the issue. Use social media to spread the word with the hashtag It's On Us, and demand that your universities meet their legal and moral obligation to protect their students on campus and hold perpetrators accountable. Basic things like campus surveys. You're much more likely to be honest in a campus survey where it's anonymous as to how you're being treated and what you've gone through on campus. Having a safe place for students to go and share what happened to them in confidence, from resident advisors to campus health centers. Coordinating with community partners such as rape crisis centers, local law enforcement, women's health centers, state coalitions. You heard from the senator who wants to go even further in beefing up Title IX to be sure that universities do everything they can to stop this. The Department of Education has made it crystal clear that schools that fail in their responsibility to protect women on campus are in violation of Title IX and risk federal investigation and financial penalties. We already have 159 universities being investigated. We mean it. They are Ivy League. They are small liberal arts colleges. They are large state universities. Look, it comes down to a simple proposition. We have to change the culture on campus and society as to what is acceptable. We have to change the standard of decency by which we measure ourselves. The standard by which we should measure ourselves is that any time consent is not given or cannot be given, we understand, we make no mistake, we make no excuses. It is rape, or it is whatever the form of sexual assault is taken, and it's a crime. That should be the measure of our decency. There's nothing abstract about this. It's not complicated. It's like that famous Supreme Court decision about pornography. You know when you see it, you know. All of you know. You know when it's wrong. You know. Guys, these women are your friends. They're your sister, your brother, your classmates. It's about the woman, the man, the gay, the straight, the transgender classmate down the hall in the dorm, in your class, on your team. It's about the high school girl you haven't met yet, but is already dreaming of coming to Syracuse in her freshman year, a dream that could be shattered forever if you don't step up and change the environment today. Guys, it's not complicated. You're an upperclassman. You're at a fraternity party. A lovely young freshman girl gets drunk, like too many do, especially in their freshman year. And she's nearly passing out. And you see your roommate or your fraternity brother walking her upstairs. Have the gumption to step in. Tell him. Expose him. Save him. Have the nerve. Look at that young woman as if she were your sister or your mother. You know it's wrong. You know. This is about the goon mauling his date as she tries to get back into her dormitory, into her room. This is about a man, one of the guys you play with on a ball club, who thinks it's cool in certain circumstances to grab a woman's rear end as she's walking by. It's about being responsible. It's about making sure everyone you know understands that no means no. No exceptions. It gets down to a simple proposition. You know, the guys that I played sports. I was a pretty good high school athlete. I played in college. And I used to love the idiots in the locker room who talk about how much I got last night. They're usually the guys, the ugliest guys on the team. No, real. No, for real. They're usually the guys are the ugliest guy. Usually the guy who wouldn't know what the hell to say to a woman if she weren't drunk. And everybody'd sit there and go, that's cool. That's cool. That's sick. It's sick. Now, granted, because I was more worried about my father than I was about anything else, I used to sit there and say, you ugly bastard, you ugly son of a bitch, who made you think? What made you think? No, I'm serious. Guys, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying. So you have to change the culture, and it's even the way we speak. I don't want everybody to be a prude. I don't want everybody to all of a sudden be, goody-goody. But there's some things that are just beyond the pale. And they got to stop. Folks, we can do this. You can do this. If you don't think the culture can change, Think about what your generation has already done with regard to marriage equality and overall LGBT rights. As some of you may remember, 4 years ago, I got roundly criticized, and the press had a field day where Biden was leaned too far forward on his skis. No one ever doubts I mean what I say. The problem is I sometimes say all that I mean. And on Meet the Press, I was asked about how I felt about marriage equality. I said, I have no problem with it. We should all be treated the same. And I endorse gay marriage. Well, the roof fell in. The roof fell in the White House. The Capitol dome began to creak. Everybody wondered, what the hell is Biden doing? Except the president, because he agreed with me. I remember sitting down with the president. I made a bet. I said, I'll bet you the significant majority of the American people agree with me. Agree with me. Within 1 week, polls were taken, and the numbers are correct. The average is 56% of the American people already were there, and your generation was there in the 70s. It's changed. You changed it. You changed the culture to make us more honorable, more decent. 15 years ago, if a group of professors went down to lunch, I don't know where they eat lunch these days anymore here, but went down to lunch and 4 or 5 were sitting together in the faculty room, and a waiter came up who happened to be gay and said, what can I get you? If one of the people who were at a business lunch said, well, let me tell you what I'd like, the other 4 would remain silent because they didn't think it was appropriate for them to speak out, because it was assumed that society as a whole thought it was okay to treat gays with disrespect. You know what happened today. That jerk would not be invited back to lunch. The other 4, because they're not homophobic, would speak up and say, what in the hell are you doing? What are you doing? That's a cultural change. And you can do the same. You can do the same for sexual violence. There will always be crimes committed. Rape will continue to occur. But again, guys, women, ask yourselves, it's not just men. You women have a responsibility to speak up. Some of you know women on this campus who you know are being abused. Some of you know those who have been. You have an obligation to speak up, like that guy's trying to come in the side door. Look, ask yourself, what would I have done if it were my brother, my sister? Am I doing enough for the women who I know or the ones I never meet? Am I demanding enough of my school, of my classmates, of my fraternity brothers, my teammates? Most importantly, ask yourself. You know this thing, when I started law school, we were told here at Syracuse, said, look to your right and look to your left. One of you will not be here next year. Well, guys, don't look to your right or left. Look in the mirror. Look in the mirror and ask yourself, just you, ask yourself, are you living up to the standard that you think is required to be a man? It's no one else. It's you. It's you. And the real definition of manhood is having the courage to do the right thing. And by the way, ladies, it's hard. It's a hard thing for a guy on campus to step in. My son stepped in when he went to Syracuse. My son, Bo, he went to the law school. He was attorney general. He went to Penn undergraduate school. When he stepped in, when a guy was mauling a co-ed in the co-ed dorm he was in, he said, hey man, what are you doing? And pulled him. Well, he ended up paying a price because this guy was the captain of a particular team, and the word went out, get Biden. Except they didn't count on Beau Biden's little brother. who came up and beat the hell out of the captain. But anyway, you think I'm joking. I'm not joking. My generic point is it's not easy. It takes a lot of courage for a man to stand up in. That's why we got to find other means on campuses. There ought to be telephones. There ought to be ways you can text quickly something that's happening. I don't expect everybody to walk up to the 240-pound guy when you're 5'9", 148 pounds. But least you can do, you can holler. Everybody can do something. But it's up to all of you to have the gumption to stand up and speak out. There's no excuse, like I said. Don't look left and right. Look in the mirror. Because it's real simple. It's on you. It's on me. It's on us. And I promise you, remember that vice president who stood here 15 years from now. I remember Hubert Humphrey that's the vice president who spoke here when I graduated. Remember what that guy said, that we can fundamentally change this. And my prayer is you're going to look back when you're dropping your daughter off as a freshman and not have the same worry every parent has as they drop their child off for their first year of college. It's not going to be 1 in 5. It's not going to be 1 in 10. It'll be 1 in 100. But you can change it. And I can't tell you how proud of you I am being here. I can't tell you how much it means to me to be back on campus. And I can't tell you how optimistic I'm about what you're going to be able to do. God bless you all, and may God protect the survivors. Thank you very much.